China's influence in the South Pacific has grown rapidly in the last decade. More countries in the region are forming alliances and signing development and aid deals with Beijing. Now a possible security agreement between China and Solomon Islands has some countries, especially Australia, worried.
The security pact between China and Solomon Islands ringing alarm bells.
An emerging threat on our nation's doorstep.
What is the real big worry here?
How concerned should we be?
It is a cause of great concern, as some foreign policy watchers have described it. It's Australia's greatest nightmare.
So what's got Australia and its allies so alarmed about China's alliance with Solomon Islands? Recently, leaked documents showed a new security agreement could see Chinese personnel and equipment stationed in the country, which lies about 2,000 kilometres northeast of Australia.
That is our backyard, that is our neighbourhood, and we are very concerned of any activity that is taking place in the Pacific Islands.
And a reminder of the constant pressure and threats that present in our region to our own national security.
We do not want to see the militarisation of the Pacific.
But why does Australia see China having a military presence in the region as concerning? Essentially, it's about world order. China has emerged as the great rival of Australia's traditional strategic ally, the US.
In the end, our problem with Beijing goes right to the fact that they want to take America's place as a dominant power in East Asia, and we don't want them to.
Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare said the backlash to his country's security agreement with China was insulting, and there were no plans to ask Beijing to build a military base in the country.
We find it very insulting, Mr. Speaker, to be branded as unfit to manage our sovereign affairs or have other motives in pursuing our national interests.
In recent years, Solomon Islands, like many countries in the South Pacific, has been seeking closer ties to China. In 2019, Solomon Islands struck a new diplomatic deal with Beijing and ended its 36-year relationship with Taiwan. When Honiara announced the deal, Taipei responded by closing its embassy and flying its staff out of the country. You might wonder why a country like Solomon Islands can't have diplomatic ties with both China and Taiwan. This is because of long-standing tensions between the two. Essentially, China sees Taiwan as a breakaway province that will eventually need to be reunified, while Taiwan sees itself as a democracy. Taiwan has worked hard to create alliances in the Pacific, but China has been winning over many of Taiwan's allies and encouraging them to adopt the One China policy. Countries who acknowledge the policy do not have an official diplomatic relationship with Taiwan. The Pacific has traditionally been a stronghold for Taiwan, but with Solomon Islands and Kiribati switching ties in 2019, only 4 countries in the region, Marshall Islands, Nauru, Tuvalu and Palau, still maintain diplomatic ties to Taiwan. Many see increased financial aid as key to what China is offering Solomon Islands. When Solomon Islands switched allegiance to China, some US $500 million was reportedly promised by Beijing. This was a lot more than Taiwan promised. Between 2011 and 2017, Taipei reportedly spent US $105 million in the Solomons. At the time, China said it could offer the country unrivaled opportunities.
We're convinced that the establishment and development of diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China, the world's second largest economy with more than 1.4 billion people and a bright future, will surely bring unprecedented development opportunities for the Solomon Islands.
This deal is one of many examples of what's known as China's Belt and Road Initiative, a global development strategy to create trade routes and increase Chinese influence around the world. But back in Solomon Islands, not everyone has been happy about Beijing's growing influence. Last year, violent protests broke out in the capital Honiara, and they were in part linked to foreign policy. Many local Chinese-owned businesses were targeted in the protests.
The deepening rift between Malata and the central government has been spurred on by accusations the government isn't doing enough to develop their region, and by the government's 2019 decision to end relations with Taiwan and switch to China.
To help quell the violence, Australia sent troops and police officers to Solomon Islands. Prime Minister Sogavare requested the assistance as part of the existing security agreement between Canberra and Honiara. China has also sent police to Solomon Islands to train local officers, a move Australian officials are watching closely. Tensions on the streets of Honiara have calmed, and Solomon Islands Prime Minister continues to defend the alliance with China.
The fact that some people believe that there are countries, that small independent sovereign states like Solomon Islands should not extend their diplomatic relations to include security arrangements, because that is a threat to the national security while they enjoy such relationship. We find that very, very difficult to swallow.
If the Pacific nation goes ahead with the planned security deal, any next move by Australia will likely be aimed at countering China's influence in the region.